One of the most reticent members of the Duggar family, Johannah Duggar had always been known to discreetly adhere to the stringent guidelines and standards established by her parents. In private, however, she was making decisions that would surprise everyone. Johannah married the guy she loved 2 years ago in secret, keeping her parents and siblings in the dark. Knowing that the family's rigid beliefs and domineering expectations may cause them to disagree with her choice, she chose not to tell them. For months, Johannah led a second existence, subtly establishing a life with her spouse while publicly abiding by her family's norms. And marriage was not the end of the mystery. Johannah found out she was pregnant in a twist of fate that would shake the Duggar household. Despite the growing pressure to keep her marriage and her pregnancy a secret, she made the decision to completely embrace her pregnancy. The revelation came as a shock to the Duggar family when they eventually learned about it. Her parents, who were well known for running a strict and traditional home, were extremely ashamed and humiliated. Hey guys, welcome to Vogue TV. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Johannah's autonomous actions without their consultation were incomprehensible to them. Siblings were surprised and perplexed, whispering in amazement and disbelief. Unspoken inquiries and censure filled the air during family get-togethers, making them unpleasant. But Johannah remained determined. She clarified that her decisions were motivated by love and a desire to live her life as she saw fit. She saw the marriage and pregnancy as a way to embrace a future she had chosen for herself, build a family, and be committed. But in spite of her justification, the Duggar family was torn between feelings of disappointment, humiliation, and fear of criticism from the public and their large social network. The announcement sparked a firestorm on the internet outside the family. The Duggar family's admirers and supporters showed surprise, incredulity, and even solidarity with Johannah's bravery. Social media was ablaze with comments applauding her courage, denouncing the family's dominance, and making predictions about how she would interact with her parents and siblings in the future. According to insiders, the family was experiencing significant levels of strain as the tales circulated. The dynamics of the family have been permanently changed by Johannah's covert actions. The once strictly controlled family image had been destroyed, and the Duggar home had altered, thus there was no turning back. A pivotal moment that would have long-term effects on Johannah and the whole family was her decision to follow her heart. Johannah Duggar's story ultimately expanded beyond her covert marriage and pregnancy. It turned into a tale of bravery, independence, and the difficulties of defying strict familial norms. Johannah accepted her new existence, resolved to face the future on her own terms, while the family battled their sentiments of shame and humiliation. Johannah Duggar entered a life that was both exciting and terrifying after the covert wedding. The Duggar household, rigorous routines, family expectations, and unceasing inspection were one side of her familiar life. There was a secret life on the other side, one that was full of peaceful mornings spent with her spouse, secret plans for the future, and the exhilarating independence of making her own decisions. It became a careful balancing act every day. She would attend family meals, assist with housework, wake up feeling burdened by her parents' regulations, and keep up the appearance of the obedient daughter that everyone expected of her. She also treasured the moments she had stolen with her spouse, such as late-night phone conversations, private outings, and private laughs. Every interaction was exhilarating, but also tense. Every time Johannah got home, her heart raced. What if someone caught a behavioral slip? What if she wasn't prepared to respond to a sibling's questions? Every encounter with her family necessitated a careful balancing act between disclosure and secrecy. She discovered that she had become an expert at nonchalant evasions, half-truths, and precise timing. Johannah thrived in the calm delight of her private life in spite of the worry. She and her spouse had dreams for the future, including the prospect of beginning a family, a tiny house of their own, and peaceful evenings full with laughing. Their relationship was reinforced by each shared secret, but Johannah was also made more aware of the thin line she was walking. Everything may fall apart with one slip. The weight of secrecy grew heavier over time. She yearned for her parents' approval, to be open and honest with them, and to share her joy without fear. However, she was aware that her choices would probably be categorically rejected by the rigid Duggar ideals. She thus proceeded with her careful balancing act, alternating between two incompatible universes. Then came another surprise, a discovery that would further complicate matters of secrecy. Johannah found out she was expecting. There was a surge of happiness upon hearing the news, but it was accompanied by the weight of inevitable fate. Her family will soon find out. She would soon have to deal with the fallout from her decisions when the secret she had so carefully protected was exposed. For the time being, Johannah kept up her double life, balancing freedom and terror, loyalty and love. Every happy moment was tinged with anxiety, and every day was a challenge to bravery. But she knew in her heart that she had made the right decision. Whatever occurred, she would not go back because she had followed her heart. Nothing could have prepared Johannah Duggar for the news that would alter everything, even though life in concealment had been difficult. After trying to ignore the tiny symptoms for weeks, Johannah finally discovered she was pregnant one quiet morning. Her heart pounded with a mixture of dread, love, and excitement. There was no going back from the secret she had been so diligently protecting since this child, her child, was a living testament to the decision she had made. She let herself dream for a moment about the future. A small crib in a dimly lit room, her husband's warmth beside her, and the sound of a baby's laughing filling their modest house. But eventually, reality set in. What would her parents think? How will the news affect her siblings? Tradition and rigorous obedience to norms were highly valued by the Duggar family, and any deviation was frequently greeted with embarrassment or censure. She was on the verge of revealing the secret she had been keeping so far. Long hours were spent by Johannah and her husband planning, preparing, and conversing. They spoke on what to say, how to deal with the disclosure, and how to emotionally guard themselves. Johannah refused to give up the life she had chosen, even though she knew she couldn't conceal the pregnancy indefinitely. She became more determined to confront her family with courage and honesty, even if it meant disappointment or confrontation. There was always the worry of being judged. Every family get-together seemed to be a clockwork countdown to the ultimate revelation. Johannah observed small shifts in her demeanor, tentative smiles, cautious looks, and more circumspect speech. She wondered if someone had already picked up on the truth, and she felt acutely conscious of the eyes around her. Then the time arrived that she had both feared and expected. Unaware of the secret, a relative made a suspicious-sounding comment about her absence from a family gathering. The walls were closing in on Johannah. She was certain that the truth would soon be discovered. All of it, the marriage, the pregnancy, the decision she had made, was going to clash with the strict Duggar family culture. There was a silent pride in Johannah despite the terror. She had made the decision to pursue her desired life, independence, and love. She felt more determined than ever now that she was carrying a kid that represented that decision. She felt she could no longer hide, regardless of what the Duggar family thought. The most stunning episode in her family's history was set to revolve around her secret life. Johannah could no longer conceal the secret she had been keeping for 2 years. The Duggar family received the news of her marriage and pregnancy like a bolt of lightning. The home was rocked by shock, which was soon followed by feelings of disbelief and humiliation. Johannah's decisions were a painful blow to parents who had taken great satisfaction in maintaining rigid beliefs and dominating the family story. Her parents found it difficult to accept the information. Rob Duggar's face was a mixture of sadness and rage, and every strained word showed his dissatisfaction. The normally composed matriarch, Michelle Duggar, felt a mixture of perplexity, guilt, and anxiety tighten her heart. They were baffled by Johannah's prolonged concealment of such a profoundly transforming secret from them. Her siblings had different reactions. Some muttered in disbelief, finding it difficult to make sense of the sister they believed they knew and the self-reliant young lady who had discreetly gotten married and established a family. Others were offended that Johannah had taken this action without first informing the family in which she had been raised. Tension was in the air, and even lighthearted discussions were tainted by judgment and unasked questions. Known for maintaining a flawless facade to the public, the Duggar family was suddenly dealing with an unavoidable personal problem. There was a strong feeling that the principles they had lived by had been breached, a fear of social criticism, and humiliation at how the secret would be seen in public. Family get-togethers turned become contentious events that were laden with criticism and unspoken animosity. Johannah, however, remained determined despite the confusion. She had expected this response, but it did not make her less determined. She had to endure rejection from her family because she had chosen independence and love. Regardless of the agony it caused her family, she was determined to enjoy life to the fullest because her marriage and pregnancy were her facts. There was no denying that Johannah's life had changed irrevocably, despite the Duggar family's struggles with shock and embarrassment. There was no turning back once the family's flawless image had been destroyed. Her parents and siblings would now have to face the truth of Johannah's decisions and the new course she had chosen for herself because she had followed her heart. After her covert marriage and pregnancy were revealed, the days that followed were stressful and burdensome. Conversations were brief and tense. Family members exchanged uncomfortable looks, and Johannah felt the pressure of criticism bearing down on her. However, she was aware that remaining silent would not help the situation. She had to express her truth if she was to find serenity and an opportunity for understanding. Johannah requested to have a conversation with her parents one evening. Anticipation filled the room, and the air was alive with whispered questions and unspoken rage. Despite her racing heart, she took a deep breath and started. "Dad, Mom." She met their eyes and continued, "I know this is a shock, and I understand why you're upset. I didn't make these decisions carelessly. I got married because I love him, and I'm expecting a child because I want to spend the rest of my life with him. One day, hopefully, you'll realize that this wasn't done to harm you." As they listened, her parents' expressions were a mix of grief, disappointment, and incredulity. Rob Duggar's fist clenched and his mouth tensed as he searched for the right words. Tears filled Michelle's eyes as she struggled to balance her feelings of betrayal and maternal love. Her siblings lingered close by, some silently listening while others whispered to one another. They all experienced a range of feelings, including admiration for Johannah's bravery, amazement at her disobedience, and discomfort at the disturbance of the family's meticulously preserved order. Johannah went on, her voice more confident now, bolstered by conviction. "I am aware that I broke customs and rules, but this is my life and my decision. I simply want you to know that I'm content and that I'm making an effort to act in my family's best interests. I'm not asking for your approval right now." For a long time, the room was silent. Nobody said anything. Then, gradually, the tension started to change. There was a slight recognition of Johannah's bravery, despite the lingering hurt and rage. Instead of hiding or compromising her truth, she had confronted the family's judgment head-on. Relationships would need time to adjust and wounds to heal, but Johannah had made the first important move. She had expressed her emotions, exposed her decisions, and affirmed her autonomy. Johannah was determined that she would no longer dwell in the shadows, even though the Duggar family would have to face reality. She was prepared to wholeheartedly embrace her life, her marriage, and her pregnancy, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The Duggar family did not remain in the dark about Johannah Duggar's covert marriage and pregnancy for very long. Social media exploded as soon as the information went viral online. Fans, followers, and interested bystanders flocked to platforms with responses that ranged from admiration to criticism, shock to support. The public had access to Johannah's private life, and it was being closely watched. Thousands expressed their incredulity on Twitter. Johannah Duggar maintained a covert marriage for 2 years? It's unbelievable. As well as her parents must be embarrassed. Other voices, meanwhile, voiced their solidarity. Johannah is finally making her own decisions. Love is love, and she's courageous for standing by her convictions in spite of her family's pressure. TikTok and Instagram were no exception. Images of the Duggar family, clips that speculated about her marriage, and comments that dissected every aspect of her life spread quickly. Both hilarious and critical memes surfaced, while Johannah-related hashtags gained popularity across several nations. The family, who are renowned for preserving a very controlled public persona, found themselves under intense scrutiny and confronted with a level of scrutiny and interest they had never encountered before. The attention was too much for Johannah. She carefully read the remarks, attempting to ignore the negative and concentrate on encouraging ones. Although she was touched by the commendation for her bravery, She was reminded that making her own decisions had repercussions by the criticism, presumptions, and constant rumors. The fact that her family and the world now knew her truth, whether they were prepared for it or not, seemed to be emphasized by every post and viral video. The public response increased pressure even inside her family. Her parents were concerned about criticism from the public and possible consequences from media attention. Concerned murmurs were passed between siblings, some attempting to defend her while others were still having difficulty balancing their humiliation with the indisputable truth of Johannah's decisions. But despite everything, Johannah began to feel more powerful. She had spoken her truth in front of her family. She knew that she could also stand up to criticism now that she was in the public eye. Even if the social media craze was intense, it did establish that her life was no longer secretive. She was determined to live her life to the fullest, regardless of what other people thought, and her choices, marriage, and pregnancy were all publicly visible. One thing became evident in the midst of the internet storm. Johannah Duggar was more than just the unassuming daughter of a well-known family. As a young woman, she was making her own decisions, embarking on a path determined by her own desires, and prepared to take on any obstacle that she might encounter. The Duggars were a different family. Johannah's covert decisions had upended the formerly steady rhythm of calm obedience, family rituals, and meticulously preserved appearances. The family had been rocked by her marriage and pregnancy, and the stress was evident in every room, every sibling glance, and every conversation. Once a time of comfort and laughter, family get-togethers have evolved into exercises in self-control. Every grin was tentative, every word seemed heavy. In private conversations, parents discussed how to react, how to keep things under control, and how to balance their love for their daughter with their feelings of embarrassment and sadness. Each sibling responded differently. Some expressed their disappointment that Johannah had taken action without first consulting the family and were outspoken in their criticism. Others suffered in silence, divided between applauding her bravery and experiencing the pain of betrayal. The energy in the house changed, and even the youngest members could feel the tension, though they were unable to fully comprehend it. Johannah, on the other hand, dealt with this new reality with a combination of resolve and fatigue. By taking part in family events and adhering to the unspoken norms when needed, she made an effort to keep the peace. However, it was hard to overlook the pressure. Every connection with her parents reminded her that the route she had chosen was not simple, and there was an undercurrent of condemnation in every conversation. Silent yet frequent arguments erupted. Due to unresolved feelings and the persistent sense of betrayal, little arguments become more heated. As Johannah's parents struggled with the conflict between their aspirations and the reality they were facing, some nights ended in tears and frustration. Her siblings were occasionally caught in the midst, unsure of how to communicate their emotions without escalating the argument. Johannah, however, remained unwavering. Determined to keep the relationship she had developed with her husband intact, she kept her attention on her marriage and the life developing inside of her. She was aware that the family might take some time, or perhaps refuse, to accept her decisions and that the path ahead would be challenging. However, she was also aware that neither her child nor her heart would be protected by avoiding conflict or confrontation. With its dynamics now a delicate mix of love, disappointment, tension, and optimism, the home was irrevocably altered. The family's foundation had been put to the test by Johannah's decisions, and there was no going back. For Johannah, her parents, and her siblings, each day was a challenge of endurance, bravery, and patience. Johannah Duggar started to concentrate on the life she was creating with her husband, despite the conflict and criticism. There were new pleasures and challenges every day. Once a cause of anxiety about disclosure, the pregnancy has now come to represent love, hope, and the future she has chosen for herself. She established routines with her spouse that focused on intimacy, care, and expectation. They spoke about names, envisioned the life they wanted for their child, and secretly decorated a tiny nursery. These peaceful times turned to become Johannah's haven from the turmoil of social scrutiny and family censure. Every kick and flutter served as a physical reminder of her decision and the life that was emerging as a result, a testament to love, bravery, and self-reliance. Johannah was still negotiating the tense ties in her family at the same time. She made an effort to keep things harmonious whenever she could, went to events, and engaged in courteous conversation. However, she resisted allowing stress to control her enjoyment. She asserted her individuality with every conversation and honest statement. Even some family members gradually came to see that Johannah made her choices out of duty and love rather than disobedience. The world kept watching from outside the home. Social media was a flurry of conjecture, praise, and criticism. Johannah discovered how to cut through the clutter, concentrating on encouraging voices and letting go of criticism that would not alter her life circumstances. She came to the realization that although she couldn't influence everyone's viewpoint, she could influence her own life and the upbringing of the family she had founded. Pregnancy was a time of delight and physical difficulties. Johannah went through periods of worry, discomfort, and exhaustion, but she was always comforted by her husband's support. Together, they listened to the baby's heartbeat, had their first ultrasound, and laughed privately about their future plans. In spite of the shock and disapproval around her, these incidents strengthened Johannah's conviction that she had made the right decision. Johannah became more and more comfortable with her choice as her belly grew and the due date drew near. Despite being unorthodox in her family's eyes, the life she had chosen was one of love, dedication, and inner strength. She accepted the new reality wholeheartedly, resolved to enter motherhood with joy and confidence, prepared to meet any obstacles that might arise from her family and the outside world. Johannah Duggar was no longer afraid or secretive. Notwithstanding the challenges she faced, she was creating a future she could claim for herself, a family nourished by love, and a life characterized by her heart. The Duggar household gradually started to come to terms with Johannah's decisions as the months went by. Though time had a tendency of softening even the sharpest edges of feeling, the initial shock and humiliation were still there. Her parents started to face their emotions more honestly, even if they were still dealing with disappointment. Even though Johannah's actions went against family custom, Rob and Michelle Duggar understood that they could not take away their love for their daughter or the life she was creating. Siblings also began to adjust to the new circumstances. Some people remained doubtful, not knowing how to balance their respect for Johannah's bravery with their allegiance to family norms. Observing her contentment and dedication, others started to discreetly assist her by listening, giving guidance, or just accepting her decisions without passing judgment. It was a timid, delicate reconciliation, but it signaled the beginning of a transformation in the family dynamic. Johannah, mindful of the delicate balance, continued to approach her family with tolerance and empathy. She gave information about her pregnancy, facilitated private chats, and allowed people to witness her commitment to her husband and kid. Slowly, the walls of animosity began to break. Some parents and siblings even expressed tentative pride, acknowledging the responsibility and affection Johannah demonstrated despite going against convention. Meanwhile, Johannah prepared for the arrival of her kid with a mixture of delight and cautious expectation. She decorated the nursery, attended pregnancy visits, and enjoyed moments of joy with her husband. Her belief that she had made the correct decisions was strengthened by each significant event, such as experiencing the baby's first movements, hearing the heartbeat, and picturing life after birth. Johannah found strength in her independence despite the fact that there were still occasional family conflicts. She came to see that, although it was significant, family approval did not define her life or the love she had for her husband and child. She became more self-assured every day at claiming her own route, striking a balance between her commitment to the life she had chosen and her family's respect. Despite being permanently altered, the Duggar household started to settle into a new routine. It was a delicate ballet of patience bridging once insurmountable divides, love facing disappointment, and ancient traditions clashing with new realities. Though Johannah's trip was far from ended, it was starting to make sense. She was ready to welcome a new life into the world, one that represented courage, hope, and the strength of following one's heart. She had faced the storm of criticism and accepted her decisions. At last the day came. The excitement, suspense, and residual tension peaked as Johannah Duggar went into labor. While Johannah dealt with the stress of childbirth with a combination of fortitude and fragility, her husband remained by her side, providing consolation and support. She was reminded of the life she had chosen and the family she was bringing into the world with each contraction and breath. Johannah and her husband were overcome with amazement and happiness when the baby was eventually born. They felt the full weight of their decisions as they held their child in their arms. All of their risks and secrets had culminated in this moment of unadulterated love and fulfillment. It was a fresh chapter, a beginning, and evidence of Johannah's bravery and tenacity. Back at the Duggar home, the baby's birth made her parents face their emotions. Love started to break through the tension, but shock and embarrassment persisted. Once overcome with shame by Johannah's disobedience, Rob and Michelle Duggar faced the unavoidable truth of their grandchild, beautiful, innocent, and the next generation of their family. Gradually, their pride surfaced along with their residual disappointment. Siblings walked up tentatively excited. Some couldn't contain their interest, looking at pictures and inquiring about the infant. Others suffered as they eventually came to see that Johannah's happiness and the child's well-being were more important than strict regulations or family expectations, even though they were still dealing with damaged sentiments. These responses were bittersweet for Johannah. She had lived the life she desired, but she still had a long way to go before she was completely accepted. She realized that the family would still face difficulties as a result of her decisions, but she also realized that love and fortitude had started to mend the wounds that concealment had caused. Once characterized by rigid regulations and a romanticized public persona, the Duggar family had undergone irreversible transformation. The birth of Johannah's kid marked the beginning of a new period in which tradition could coexist, albeit imperfectly, with love, bravery, and freedom. It served as a reminder that families change, have difficulties, and occasionally become stronger as a result of strife. Johannah experienced a deep sense of calm as she held her infant. She had accepted the life she had chosen, faced criticism, and followed her heart. She was prepared, even if the path ahead would not always be easy. Motherhood, independence, and a future she had created for herself were all wholeheartedly embraced by Johannah Duggar. Love stayed at the core of the Duggar family's trials, transformations, and reshapings, subtly bridging the gap between old expectations and fresh starts. If you're looking for more Duggar family exclusive gossip, come back to Vogue TV for all your updates by guys.